Stealth antennas, they can be fun. They can be a challenge. And for some, that's the only way to get on the air. What is a stealth antenna? Well, I suppose a stealth antenna is one that is hidden, or perhaps not so easy to see. Why would you need a stealth antenna? Well, I suppose there's many reasons. You'll have your own reasons. It may be that you don't want the neighbours to see the antenna. It may be that you've got a restriction where antennas aren't allowed. And I suppose if an antenna can't be seen, then probably you actually meet the requirements, because the idea of banning antennas is to ban the sight of antennas. Well, if you can't see an antenna, then I suppose you've met the regulations. There's probably many other reasons why you want a stealth antenna. You know, the reason I decided to shoot this video is because every so often I do operate at an alternative location where antennas really aren't allowed. And it's quite fun actually to put an antenna out that can't be seen, just to see how well it works. And you know, if you go back to the Second World War, when there was clandestine operation, invisible antennas or stealth antennas were the order of the day. And also, of course, you needed to put an antenna up pretty quickly and take it down pretty quickly. It was the time when you turned your back on antenna theory. Antenna modelling didn't exist then. But I suppose in the present day, you just turn your back on antenna modelling, you turn your back on antenna theory, and you just get your hands a bit dirty, and you see whether you can actually operate using a stealth antenna, an antenna that is operated under sort of somewhat difficult conditions, because quite clearly it's not going to be very high. It may be hidden amongst bushes or shrubs and so forth. Will an antenna like that work? Well, let's take a look at the stealth antenna. You know, if you're a ham radio operator, you've probably been born up on the theory that says that the antenna should be out in the clear, it should be half wavelength above the ground, and it will give you some pretty good results if you can get it that high. Well, quite clearly with a stealth antenna you can't. And there's many, as I said just now, many restrictions that affect ham radio operators. But there's also the challenge, and I think that if you are in a situation where, for whatever reason, you've got severe restrictions on antennas, then it doesn't mean to say that you can't put an antenna up. It just means to say that you've got to put an antenna up that other people can't see. And part of the challenge is to see what you can actually achieve operating under somewhat restricted conditions. And as I said at the opening of this video, during the Second World War, that's exactly what was happening. You strung out a length of wire and you hope for the best, and very often the hope produced some reasonable results. So let's take a look at what I've been using, and then you may be able to adapt it for your particular use. The first thing I do is to give myself a bit of an advantage. When I'm out operating portable, I usually take a 5 or 10 watt transceiver with me, QRP. But if I'm operating at an alternative address, I can take advantage of the AC mains power supply and take a 100 watt transceiver with me. If I take a 100 watt transceiver with me, I've immediately got a bit of an advantage. At least I'm going to be able to transmit at a reasonable power level, and that to some extent may offset the fact that I'm using a stealth antenna. The antenna I've suggested, of course, is only one option. You may have other ideas. The reason I suggested this particular setup is because it's very simple, and you can plug it straight into your transceiver, and if there's a little bit of VSWR, your internal antenna matching unit should take care of that. Some magazines or some books show small antennas, small whip antennas buried behind shrubs and this sort of thing. But my experience is that if you're going to use an invisible antenna or put an antenna up that's not going to offend neighbours, then make it as long as possible, because still, good rule of thumb, the more wire you get out, the more likely you are to get better radiation. That's why I've opted for this end-fed half-wave antenna. Now, I found the simplest antenna for my purpose was an end-fed antenna, an end-fed half-wave. Why? Well, all you need is a length of wire. You don't need a long length of coax cable going down somebody else's garden. You just need a length of coax that goes out of a window or a door or any other space that you can get the coax through to the outside world. Then you need a 49:1 UnUn and a length of wire. Now, the band that I chose to concentrate on in recent operations was the 20-metre band, because it's open most of the 24 hours actually. It's certainly open into early evening, and as we head out towards summer it tends to be open all day. So I'll just sketch on a sheet of paper here the simple 49:1 balun feeding a 20-metre end-fed half-wave. Just as a reminder for those that may not be familiar with the end-fed half-wave, you just need a length of wire which is a half-wave. So on 20 metres we're going to have a length of 10 metres of wire, and we're going to feed it to one end, and we're going to feed it with a 49:1 UnUn, unbalanced to unbalanced. You put your coax cable in there, you run your aerial down the garden there, you can put an insulator on there if you need be, and a bit of cord to tie it off. Basically, it's a half-wave length of wire on 20 metres, 10 metres long, and it functions as a half-wave antenna, albeit a bit low. 49:1 UnUn matches the high impedance, because a half-wave wavelength of wire got low impedance in the centre. We're not feeding it at the centre, we're feeding it at the end. So it's got a high impedance there. 49:1 UnUn converts the high impedance down to around about 50 ohms, so you get a good match on the length of cable, coax cable, going back to your transceiver. Now, one convenient function of this antenna is that not only does it resonate on the 20-metre band, but it also resonates on the harmonic, and the harmonic of 20 metres is 10 metres, so it also functions as two half-wave lengths on 10 metres. So this 10-metre length of wire, don't get the length and the frequencies confused, this 10-metre length of wire actually resonates on the 14 megahertz band and also the 28 megahertz band, dual band antenna. That length of wire gave us two bands, but here's a neat trick. Let's get a length of wire which is 7.5 metres long. 7.5 metres long. And we'll have the UnUn matching unit at the end there. That length of wire will resonate on 15 metres. Now, if we put a little insulator there and then add another 2.5 metres of wire, then together those two lengths make up 10-metre length of wire, which we talked about just now. So if you have an insulator there, that will resonate on the 15-metre band or the 21 megahertz band. If you then short across that insulator there, you'll have an antenna that then covers the 14 megahertz and the 28 megahertz band. So in other words, you have the potential of a three-band aerial covering 20 metres, 15 metres and 10 metres. Open circuit there, it just covers 15 metres. Short that across there with a croc clip, a couple of croc clips, and you've then got 20 metres and 10 metres. So you've now got a tri-band antenna that you can pop through the shrubs down the garden. Now we can take that a stage further. If we add an inductance there of around about 65 microhenries, that is a choke, and it chokes the operation of this antenna. So in other words, it has no effect on this antenna on the 10, 15 or 20 metre bands. It has no effect at all. But if you put croc clips across there so that the antenna there is resonating on the 20 metre and the 10 metre band, and then you add around about 1.5 metres of wire, that antenna now will work on 40 metres, so you have a 4-band antenna. So let's just recap. If that insulator is open circuit there, the antenna works on 15 metres. If you short circuit it, the antenna then works on 20 metres and 10 metres, and with that coil and additional wire will also work on the 40 metre band. So you've now got a quad band antenna. Quite nifty, isn't it? Now, as you can see, it's very simple. You can actually make your own 49:1 UnUn. If you don't want to make it, then we do stock them, and I'll just put some information just up here on the screen so you can see that if you want to purchase one, you can purchase one. When it comes to putting the antenna outside, you might have a fence running down your garden. Let me just turn this camera around. You might have a fence like that running down your garden. You could run the aerial along the top of the fence. Nobody would see it. And then if we come over to the other side, you might have a lot of shrubs. Let's show you some shrubs we've got here. You see, you've got those shrubs there. You could put your aerial through there. I mean, if it's summer, of course, they have leaves on it, but just run your aerial through those shrubs there, and that would be your place to put your aerial. It's all a question of being, having good ideas, being intuitive and so forth. And what effect does the leaves on the shrubs have on the signal? Well, it must have some effect, of course. It's got to have some effect, but probably not a lot. And anyway, does it really matter? You can only make do with what you've got. And if you look down the average garden, I'm sure you'll find a place to hang an aerial. So that's a typical situation. This is my garden, of course, but I'm sure there's many gardens with similar layouts, and you can find places to put your antenna, hang your antenna, your secret antenna, your stealth antenna, your invisible antenna. Before we continue, here's a reminder of some big savings you can make on Yaesu equipment, which finishes on the 20th of January 2025. So don't miss out on this. Anyway, take a look. Some of the Yaesu items have got a cashback offer on them. And I'll put up on the screen now the list of items that you need to look at if you want to get or enjoy the Yaesu cashback deal. And if you're interested in doing a part exchange, you can save even more. So this is particularly relevant if you're going to buy perhaps something rather pricey like the Yaesu FTDX 101 series, or even the FTDX 10, or even my favourite, the FT710, which is an amazing transceiver. So you've got your stealth antenna. You run it down the garden. I mean, I showed it along the top of the fence or through some shrubs. You'll have your own ideas. The main thrust is that you can have contacts on very low antennas. I've done it time and time again. And you might think, well, wait a minute, a low antenna, how can it possibly work? Well, all I can say is give it a try. If you've got some restrictions where you operate from, or for other reasons you need an antenna which is basically invisible, then give it a try. And also, the other thing I would say is don't set your sights too high. The first thing you want to do is to make sure it works. First thing you want to do is make sure it works, get some contacts, get a feel for the antenna, and never judge an antenna the first time you use it, because the chances are It's either going to give you some wonderful contacts which you can't repeat again over the next few days, or it's going to give you some very poor results which you may prejudge and think, well, this is not going to work. With an antenna, you always need to give it time. Radio conditions forever changing, particularly at the moment. We're in the high sunspot period of the 11-year cycle, and you can get some amazing contacts, but also you can get some pretty dismal days as well. So don't prejudge it. Now let's very briefly talk about setting up the antenna before we finish this video. When you've got an antenna that's low to the ground, then almost certainly the normal dimensions are going to be a bit too long and you need to trim it back. The golden rule with any antenna is to cut it slightly longer and then trim it back. When the antenna is only about 2 meters, 2.5 meters above the ground, as I say, it's almost certainly going to be a bit shorter than you'd expect because of the proximity of the ground. So be prepared to trim it. With an end-fed half-wave antenna, you really need to be prepared to do a little bit of trimming at the end. Just trim the far end and go for the best VSWR. It's not a prolonged operation. Just trim it back bit by bit. Don't over trim it. Don't take big chunks off it, around about 1 or 2 centimeters at a time. And particularly on the 40-meter section where you've got this loading coil, then trim that very slowly indeed, because any reduction in the length will make quite a significant change in resonance. But it's all part of the fun in getting the antenna resonant. And once it's resonant, I think you'll be very pleased with the VSWR results you get. One of the things that I've learned about ham radio is that it's all about experimentation. It's all about enjoyment. And certainly don't regard a low antenna as a non-starter. It can work quite well. It can work surprisingly well. Now, low antennas normally give you high angle radiation, which means to say short distance contacts, but it doesn't always work that way. So I would encourage you, if you've got a restriction for whatever reason, then give it a try. The thing that I've found is that it certainly helps to run 100 watts. If you're running QRP, then you've got an antenna which is not in the best position and you've got low power. If you can generate about 50 watts or more, then you'll probably have some very good success. It's rather like fishing, you know. There's a skill to it as well. There's a skill to it. If you're not getting very good results, don't just sit there calling CQ. Have a hunt round and listen for stations that are calling CQ and then give them a call. I found time and time again, you know, you can go on the band and there's not much activity. You put out a CQ and think, gosh, there's nobody about. And you put out another CQ. Now you can argue, if you don't put out CQs, people won't hear you. Well, that's true. But very often, it's only a question of tuning down the band and finding a station that's calling CQ. At least you know he's listening. And the chances are, that if you go back to him, you'll make contact. So, I wish you all well with your invisible antenna, and you might be surprised at how well it works. Don't forget, amateur radio is a hobby. It's a challenge. And if you're in a situation where you can't put up a decent antenna, treat it as a challenge. Get some enjoyment out of it. Let me know how you get on. In the meantime, thanks for your support on this channel, much appreciated. Thank you for your support. The shop. Don't forget we ship goods all over the world. And as usual, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care for now. Bye.